I have a PhD in engineering. I'm not a medical doctor, but I have used Johns Hopkins app, which tracks all the infections around the world to do a very objective scientific analysis. I will give the viewer a very good safety advice and investor a money-making advice in the end of this video. Okay, I want to establish what the coronavirus likes and what it doesn't like. Coronavirus likes cold and wet. Here's the evidence. Diamond Princess. It was in Japan, a very high latitude. It was wet and cold when the infection exploded. At the same time, there are dozens of carnival cruises in the Pacific Ocean, but most of them are in warm water and almost no community infection on those ships. Here's how the ships look like during this time of the year. You can see Japan has very high latitude and very cold, and the rest of the ships are all in much warmer water in the Pacific Ocean. Now, I want to establish another fact that the coronavirus do not like dry or warm. We know that there are several hundred infected Chinese abroad. Those patients, they have to take a flight to get out of China. And the CDC in every country has done a very careful follow-ups on passengers sitting around those patients. There must be thousands of those passengers, but no air flight infection was reported. One of the reasons is because the air in the airplane at 35,000 feet altitude is very dry. And those passengers, they do not get infected because the air is warm and dry. So this is two extreme conditions. One is very wet and cold in the ship in Japan, and all the air flights, they are dry and warm, which it doesn't have, it's not conducive to the transmission of the virus. And the newspapers always tell you the bad news. I'm going to tell you the good news. The good news is half of the world population in the warm area basically unaffected by this virus. If you cut the Earth at the 30 degrees latitude, you will basically divide the world population into two halves. And most infections are at the northern half of that division. There are several countries with very large populations and very intensive interactions on the southern half. They are not affected because those countries are very their economy is tied to the China, so that's the interaction is very intensive. For example, Africa, South America, they not affected. Australia, and also not affected. All their cases are travel related. Here, the countries with very large populations and intensive interactions on the southern half. India, 1.3 billion people has only 3 cases. Thailand, 49 million. Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Australia. The Malaysia and India and the Philippines to China is like a Mexico to United States. The people goes to China to work and send the money home. So there's a lot of traveling between those countries. As you can see, there's very little infection in those countries. And the amazing thing is like Indonesia, which is almost the size of, population-wise, almost the size of the United States. 0 infection. Okay. Another area I want to look at is where we have community transmission. It's amazing that the weather of those places are very similar. Iran, South Korea, Lombardy, Italy, Oregon, Northern California, Wuhan. But I want to point out Southern California is much drier, and they have actually have more Chinese than the Northern California, but no infection, no community transmission. All of them are on the West Coast and on the wet part of the West Coast, not on the dry part and the colder part of the West Coast. Another good news is the southern part of Asia, the infection number is very stable. Okay, the colder part of Asia is still struggling, like Korea, Japan, and Wuhan. Wuhan, yeah. And most interest number to me is Guangdong. It has 1,349 cases. Guangdong is the most popular province in southern China. Also has highest cases outside of Wuhan. And I've been watching the number that 1,349 has been stable for a few days now. And the temperature in Guangdong is around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very warm. So my advice to the public, if you can afford to travel, go to a warmer and drier place. Southwest United States is ideal, like Southern California, Northern California, just Southern California, Nevada, Arizona. That's what I'm talking about. If you cannot afford to travel, try to stay home as much as you could. And if you have to go out to do your grocery or something like that, make sure the weather is warmer during the daytime. For the investors, I have two facts. The coronavirus cannot spread in the subtropical countries like India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Africa, where weather is warm. It just cannot penetrate those places, regardless how closely they tie to the China. And also another very good news is the warmer part of the Asia is stabilizing. So this tells me the coronavirus will go away and the market will recover when spring comes. This is the opportunity of lifetime.